Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. In today's edition, it's the preview to Tour of Flanders 2024. Sunday's race, 270 kilometers. It's going to be the highlight of all the most important races in Belgium. The whole town is shutting down for Tour of Flanders. When I grew up, I always thought it was Paris-Roubaix. When I talked to my Belgium teammates, though, throughout all of my 25 years of racing, my Belgium teammates always said Tour of Flanders was bigger than Paris-Roubaix. But I always thought it was Paris-Roubaix, but I guess I was wrong if you're from Belgium because the whole town shuts down. This is going to be a magnificent day of racing here on Sunday's race. But we have to go back to Dwars-door-Vlaanderen, where Wout van Aert crashed, Mads Pedersen crashed, Biniam Girmay crashed, the two super domestiques, Jasper Stuyvens crashed, and Alex Kirsch crashed, which has changed the whole chemistry going into Sunday's race. Originally, Mathieu van der Poel, one of the big-time favorites to win Tour of Flanders, and still is the #1 favorite to win Tour of Flanders right now. But before, he had Wout van Aert that was there. So Mathieu van der Poel only has to look over at Visma Lease Bike's Wout van Aert, and he always knows he has help to pull dangerous breakaways back. Now we go into Sunday's race after the crash at Dwars-door-Vlaanderen. It has changed everything. Visma Lease Bike might not be as dominant as they were, although I believe, and I'll say right up here, Mathieu Jorgensen's probably the #2 favorite to win Tour of Flanders. When you look at his win at Dwars-door-Vlaanderen, it was magical. Now, if you wanted to argue and say it's Mads Pedersen, I don't have a leg to stand on. But when you look at the crash of Mads Pedersen at Dwars-door-Vlaanderen, that is all I can say is that you don't know exactly how good Mads Pedersen will be on Sunday. I don't know exactly how good Mads Pedersen will be. And Mathieu van der Poel definitely doesn't know how good Mads Pedersen will be on Sunday. So if I'm Mathieu van der Poel, I'm highlighting Jorgensen from Visma Lease Bike as the team and the rider that I still have to watch. He got lucky here with the crash of Wout van Aert that Mathieu Jorgensen went on to win that race, because now Visma Lease Bike, in the interview from Mathieu Jorgensen, he even says that they still have to be a threat for Tour of Flanders. And I agree. That's why, Mathieu Jorgensen, I have you as the #2 favorite. When was the last time we saw American as the #2 favorite to win Tour of Flanders? Well, I got him #2, Mads #3, and I think Mathieu van der Poel has to keep an eye on Visma Lease Bike. When I look at Mathieu van der Poel's team, as I said at the start of this video, everything has changed for Sunday. Trek are no longer the outright most dominant team. Visma Lease Bike with Wout van Aert's gone, they're going to change how strong their team's going to be. Before, with Mathieu Jorgensen leading into the climbs for Wout van Aert and then blowing the whole race up, Mathieu van der Poel knew exactly what to do. Let me follow the big guy, Wout van Aert. His team will blow everything up. Doesn't matter if my team's good or not. They just need to get me near the front for the last corner before we start Old de Quermont, halfway into the race, and then certainly with 65 kilometers to go, have one guy get me in near Wout van Aert. Once we go up Old de Quermont, I follow the big guy. The selection's made. Wout van Aert, Mathieu van der Poel, maybe Mads Pedersen. The three guys work together. Then they battle it out amongst themselves for whoever is the most supreme, strongest rider here at Tour of Flanders. But now with that crash at Dwars-door-Vlaanderen, everything's erased. Every scenario I just talked about is erased. And we have to go back to last year's 23 Tour of Flanders to understand the mistake that Mathieu van der Poel made at 2023. He cannot make that same mistake. Now, what am I talking about? When the race started in 2023, Mathieu van der Poel was caught at the back napping. The riders, the classic riders especially, they love riding at the back of the group, talking about whose girlfriend's doing what party they're going to next, how their season's going. They love riding back there. If you're riding GC, you always have to ride at the front, because if you ride at the back, get caught behind a split, 3 teams are up there driving it. We saw last year, Mathieu van der Poel, like I said, caught napping. His teammates had to pull for 30 kilometers, and one was Søren Kragh Andersen going full gas for 30 kilometers to get Mathieu van der Poel back up to the first half of the peloton in 2023. Now, why did I bring that up? That meant nothing in 2023 because UAE team members, Tadej Pogacar's team, were the team that had to control the race in 23. But this year in 24, it's Alpecin de Koenig that have to control the race. If they miss the split again because Mathieu van der Poel's back there socializing, they're going to be in big time troubles. Because already, when we're looking at tomorrow's Sunday race, Mathieu van der Poel is in trouble because there are no other favorites that are on the front page as Mathieu van der Poel. Now, he's not in trouble if his Alpecin de Koninck team can get him deep into the race. Whenever I was winning races and dominating the domestic scene here in the U.S., if my team could control the racing all the way in to late into the race, the last 20% of the race, no one could control me. As you get further into the race, everybody's gas level drops at different speeds. Mathieu van der Poel's gas level, he is on energy saving mode the whole race because his form is better than everyone else's. So the further Alpecin de Koninck can get him into the finish, the more destruction he can do when he throws an attack on one of the famous bergs near the finish of Tour of Flanders. If they can only get him into halfway, say they get him into the first mark there of Haut de Quermont, that's not far enough. Mathieu van der Poel will be in big time trouble if his whole team falls apart. When we look at Alpecin de Koninck, they've had changes, just like Visma Lease Bike and just like Trek have had changes. Alpecin de Koninck have had major changes because Jasper Philipsen, he's not going to start the race. We'll see, though, that he's got a great replacement in Alex Laurence, who's on fine form. I saw him in the front group between the Poggio and the Sorpresa at Milan-San Remo, so we know he's riding very good when we see him going up over the Sorpresa and there all the way in to start the Poggio to help out Mathieu van der Poel and Jasper Philipsen to win that Milan-San Remo. But since then, at Catalonia, we saw Axel win a stage. So we know he's on good form, and he's a fine replacement for Jasper Philipsen, who honestly, I don't think should have been going to Tour of Flanders anyways, unless, of course, he was going to be a sprinter that turned into just a super domestique mode like I had when I was riding with Mercury, and it was Gord Fraser that could win any sprint there domestically and win sprints over in Europe. But if we were on a course that wasn't going to be a field sprint specialty like Tour of Flanders, Gord Fraser would switch automatically into super domestique mode, and he would put me at the front of the field before every important moment of the race until finally he was dropped. That's the ride that Jasper Philipsen would have had to have, but now he's gone. Axel Laurence has to be able to do that super domestique mode after they get deep into the climbs here at Tour of Flanders, and Søren Kragh Andersen has to be special for Alpecin de Konink's Mathieu van der Poel. But again, I take you back to 2023. It's Søren Kragh Andersen that's closing the gap for 30 kilometers because Mathieu van der Poel wanted to socialize on the back. All right, let's say they're perfect, Alpecin de Koninck, through the first half of the race. Let's say they're strong enough that after the first pass of the Haut de Quermont, when we're still 160 kilometers to go in the race, let's say they can get them all the way into 65 kilometers to go for the second pass of the Haut de Quermont. Mathieu van der Poel, if he's going to attack early, if we all know Mathieu van der Poel's attacking early, but if he attacks early, the riders behind, they have to be careful. If you can follow Mathieu van der Poel, you stay on his wheel, of course, like Mads Pedersen did at Gent-Wevelgem, and you leave Mathieu van der Poel pulling on the front for way more kilometers than you would. Same scenario at Gent-Wevelgem where Mads Pedersen then beat him in the sprint. That was a perfect tactic from Trek with Mads Pedersen putting Mathieu van der Poel on the front while he's chasing Johnny Milan for 20 kilometers in the wind. But this is a different course. Here at Flanders is not Gent-Wevelgem. It's a completely different course with more climbs coming closer together. And as you have more climbs, the stronger, better, outright favorite of the race is always going to be put more distance and more time into a rider. So if Mads Pedersen's crash has cost him any form, directly Mads Pedersen, Matteo Jorgensen, those two riders, if they can't follow Mathieu van der Poel when he's attacking early with 70, 80 kilometers to go, they have to get together, they have to work together, but leave Mathieu van der Poel out there for as long as you can and then bring him back late into the race. Matteo Jorgensen said in an interview that he believes his team cannot be underrated here because they still have great riders. And as I already said, I have Matteo Jorgensen as my #2 favorite here on form just because I don't know where Mads Pedersen is after his crash. And no one in the race is going to know until we get far into the race when Mathieu van der Poel throws an attack whether or not if Mads Pedersen is still on form. So Jorgensen as my second favorite here. The American is going to highlight something along the way, but he said in his interview he doesn't know exactly where his limit is. That means at Paris-Nice he had a little bit extra. That means that when he won at Dwars-Door-Vlaanderen he had a little bit extra. But we know from E3 Saxo Bank that his little bit of extra is not enough to bring back Mathieu van der Poel all on his own, because Mathieu van der Poel won E3 Saxo Bank solo while Mathieu Jorgensen was in the next group chasing. So we do know where his limit is, and it's not as high as Mathieu van der Poel, which means he needs Mathieu van der Poel in the wind for a longer period of time. And like he says in the interview, Mathieu Jorgensen says he needs a Tis Benoot with him, or he needs a Dylan van Barley with him so that they can play those beautiful tactics that they did at Dwars-Door-Vlaanderen on a rider such as Stefan Koen, who was attacking a bit too much. When I look at this race, again, everything has changed from Dwars-Door-Vlaanderen crash, but Mathieu van der Poel is still the #1 favorite. Can his team get him deep in the race? If it gets him within 30, 40 kilometers of the race, I don't think Mathieu van der Poel can be stopped. I think he'll light things up and he can solo all the way to the finish. But if they can only get him past the first passage of the Old de Quermont and a couple bergs thereafter, and Mathieu van der Poel starts to go with 60, 70, 80 kilometers to go like he normally attacks, if the riders behind are intelligent, stay together, leave him out there for 20 kilometers in the wind going solo, then bring him back late, you have a shot of winning if your name is Mathieu Jorgensen, because you're second on my list. Other outside favorites, Stefan Koen, absolutely. If he can ride a little smarter than he did at Dwars-Door-Vlaanderen, he has the form to win Tour of Flanders. Riders like Bahrain Victorious' Matej Mohoric certainly does. When I look at Soudal Quickstep, I gotta believe Julian Alaphilippe has the pressure left and right on his shoulders to perform here. Yes, he has the Ardennes Classics coming up later. Yes, he has crashed before, but he was top 10 at Milan-San Remo. So the Frenchman's form could be getting better and better. And here at Tour of Flanders, this was his original target to start winning in the 24 season. And we are at the Tour of Flanders for tomorrow. So the Frenchman from Soudal Quickstep, he has to have all of his teammates behind him. And when I look at their list, they have one sprinter on there named Tim Miller. Tim Miller, like I already told you with Gord Fraser, has to go into a super domestique mode. You can't be thinking Tim Miller is going to win a field sprint at Tour of Flanders because it never comes down to a field sprint. So why you would bring a sprinter is beyond me, unless Tim Miller will work 100% focused on helping Julian Alaphilippe or possibly a Casper Asgreen go deep into the Tour of Flanders, always keeping them out of trouble, always keeping them out of the wind, always keeping them fed. That's all the sprinter can do for you here at Tour of Flanders, because it is not coming down to a 100% pure field sprint here at Tour of Flanders. Mathieu van der Poel is going to make sure of that as he starts the attacks early. Now, what can happen behind? Like I said, guys, if you cannot follow the wheels of Mathieu van der Poel when he attacks, you have to stay together. You have to leave him out there for a little bit. Don't panic. Don't go in. Don't hit the panic button. Look at Mathieu van der Poel going up Old de Quermont with 67 kilometers to go, solo. When he's doing that, the guys behind stay together, work together, bring him back. If you're Visma Lease bike, you want to bring him back with a couple climbs to go. So just before the last passage of the Old de Quermont, then you want to start attacking on the soft sections of the climb, not the steep sections of the climb, and you want to attack them on all the flat sections or the descents. Do not attack Mathieu van der Poel on the steepest sections of the climb unless that guy has ridden 30 kilometers out in the wind and make tactical mistakes left and right. If you're the director sportif for Alpecin de Koenig, Mathieu van der Poel is attacking early. The most thing you want to pay attention to on your TV screen, how are the group of riders behind together? If we see Mads Pedersen, Mathieu Jorgensen, Tis Benoot, Stefan Koen, Julian Alaphilippe, Matej Mohoric back there, and they are all rotating through, and you got 70 kilometers still to go, or 65 after the Old de Quermont, you better tell Mathieu van der Poel he needs to rethink his solo effort here, back off the throttle. But if they're all split up behind Mathieu van der Poel with 60, 70 kilometers to go, you tell Mathieu van der Poel if his legs are feeling good, you better go all in 100% because they're not working well together, and you got a shot at winning a third victory here at Tour of Flanders to go along and match the victories from Fabian Cancellara, Tom Boonen, and Johan Macedo. It's going to be a fantastic race on Sunday. The tactics are going to be important because there is only one strong team. So when you're sitting on the Chesterfield, pay attention close to what's happening, who's working and who's not. And Mathieu van der Poel, don't get caught napping in the first half of the race, chasing for 30 kilometers to go, because you cannot afford to lose Søren Kragh Andersen. That is 100% certain. You need him deep into the race. So keep everything together, keep your team tight, and pay attention. If Visma Lease bike's in the move, you have to have a rider in the move. Do not let Visma Lease bike go anywhere without an Alpecin de Koenig rider, because if you have Visma Lease bike with you, you know you have at least one team that will 100% work with Mathieu van der Poel's Alpecin de Koenig squad. If you don't have Visma Lease Bike, I don't know if you have another team out there that will pull along with Albacete de Koenig to try to win Tour of Flanders if Mathieu van der Poel's in their group. So keep an eye on Mathieu Jorgensen, Thies Benoot, and the whole Visma Lease Bike squad if you want a shot at winning and your name is Mathieu van der Poel. Like and subscribe. It's going to be a fantastic butterfly effect for Sunday's race, and I'll see you real soon.